alfalfa or wheat or whatever it is they're growing with sugar beets. How long did sugar beets last? Anyway, it's just, it's so much more, I mean, aesthetically pleasing to see a field full of all kinds of things growing and working together. I think you had down in Ecuador, you saw the farms that were just all different types of.
There was a movie that came out a couple of years ago. I think it was called The Big Little Farm.
Yeah, I know.
It's exactly what this regenerative farming is about. And that was such an inspiring story about a couple in California who took over, I don't know, was it 25 acres or so? It wasn't a huge, it may have been more than that, but really it took them 7 years to work. But it was just amazing how they were able to have all of nature coordinating with each other at the end.
Well, we have, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. Who was that?
It was me, and just how much work it was. We did see that film, Carol, and how much work Gabe Brown puts into this. You know, part of it is pesticides are a lot easier than having to learn organic farming. And I was wondering when I watched that movie how funded that farm was, that Big Little Farm, because it goes 7 years without really returning a profit.
Yeah,
it's quite a proposition. You know, farmers don't make that.
They sold eggs.
Claudia, go ahead.
That small little farm has a boatload of volunteers that help them. It's just not the two of them. I mean, that would be like impossible, totally impossible. And I don't know if Gabe had a lot of people working with him, but if you're a real small operation with, you know, you and your kids, I think, you know, that it has to be, I don't know how it would work. I'm also curious if the regenerative farming, for instance, around here, how they would work it with the potato farmers and the sugar beet farmers, because those are big. And then the wheat up in the Palouse. But, you know, I see Noni's windbreak tree thing, and they're doing that in England. They're planting a lot of trees in England, 3 different kinds right next to the roads. And they do have the, you know, windbreaks or what are the hedgerows. They do have that. But, you know, there's stuff in there, you know, like there's mice and rats and possums and raccoons. And I mean, do you want those on your property? That's the question.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to mention that Nona had a statement. Why don't they, I think she means farmers, include a row of windbreak trees on the edges of fields to encourage birds and other wildlife? And I don't know if that's even possible. I think the thing I noticed is that there weren't many trees. Now, I don't know if it's because there's not enough water for trees to grow there, or if they don't choose not to water trees, or I don't really know. Does anyone want to comment on that? Claudia commented about England.
You know, that little scenario in China, I mean, that looked like that was pretty desert area that they, you know, turned back into green growing area. So, I mean, that was a question I wondered in an area that has only, as we do, 11 inches of rain a year. How do you go, can the process work here? Can you create a regenerative land here as well? And what do I do in my backyard?
Yeah, well, it did occur to me too that the climate is changing, as we're aware, and there's either more or less water where than there was in the past. And I don't think you can grow a tree without some kind of steady water. That's why there's trees near rivers and not up on the sagebrush hills. But maybe it's something that's possible for farmers to do that if it's would be profitable. It was fun to hear Jason Mraz talk about his what did he call it? something forest. What was
Food
the forest?
forest.
Food forest, yeah. Food forest. That was fun to think about. I'm not sure what a passion fruit tree looks like, but it sounds like it'd be pretty cool to have one of those. At any rate, I'm a proponent of apple trees personally, but anybody have experience with planting food forests? Claudia?
Well, I don't, but you know, LA has like the same amount of water as we do, and they irrigate. And he did mention irrigating.
He did, yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, we have 2 trees in our yard that are planted by birds or squirrels or something, and I don't particularly water them, but you know, we do water our lawn, which you know is not wonderful, but not that much. We're not that crazy about it. But I do have neighbors who have fields, fewer and fewer, but they do run cows in there. And I'm actually thinking of asking them if I can come get some of their cow patties to put in my yard. Because horse manure needs to be processed. You know, I mean, you can't just put that in. But cows, you can, because they have all the stomachs and they get, you know, they process a lot of stuff out of their food. But I have a neighbor that gets a crop of hay, a crop of alfalfa, and another crop of hay with no watering. But our water table is like 12 feet down, maybe. Apparently the alfalfa under his land.
Maybe the goal for this, area is to regenerate prairies and prairie grasses and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Too much,
Mhm.
yeah. Too much
Yeah.
invasive species. You got the darn cheatgrass, and there's so many other
Yeah.
grasses that have taken over. It's a tough battle now.
Well, one
Need
of the
buffaloes.
I don't know.
one of the, I'm sorry, who was talking? Oh, Tom, was that you?
No,
Are
One
you,
of the-
yeah, I'm done.
Okay, one of the things that I was thinking when we posed the question yesterday after the film is what kinds of things could an individual do? We're sitting here, individuals or couples, if we wanted to take some individual action, or what could a community do, like a fellowship or a town or a city, or what could a state do or a country? What sorts of things come to your mind at this point? We're called the Climate Action Team. And so whenever possible, we want to talk about actions that can be taken by us and any parts of groups of things that we participate in. So what comes to mind when you think about all of that?
Well,
Dirt business.
they referred to,
I'm sorry, Ann.
oh, Ann, okay.
The dirt business.
Dirt business.
Collect those scraps.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you know, to compost, yeah, that'd be big. I heard them say we need to have more informed consumerism, and I was thinking that using the term regenerative, which is go beyond organic, maybe it's possible that we can have a pretty good influence on our grocery stores and also support the local farmers locally who do the what do you call those? Not food banks, but the farmers markets in our community. And if we can encourage others within our community and others to watch the film and to take actions in that way, you know, we're individuals, but that's the place where we can ask those farmers who bring their products in, you know, how do you manage the soil? You know, what's the process you're using? Because we might find within our mix here that we have quite a few that are doing regenerative farming, not full tilling, and that would be encouraging in itself. But and then move beyond that to talk to our city governments and our local governments and the federal government and all that kind of thing. But it appeared to me that I had been trained to keep it in the ground. And that was a phrase that was used to keep all the fossil fuels in the ground. And then I was trained that we need to get rid of fossil fuels, period, which means we need to either move towards electrical cars or to have a carbon fee and dividend as a policy. That was well before I had seen this film or heard of regenerative agriculture. This had actually turned me totally around to think that, okay, so there isn't any quote silver bullet, but a combination of these things might have a huge impact. And in fact, if you read the drawdown book, you know, agriculture and land is like number 4 on the list of having the effects. And transportation, of course, is like number 1. So put those things together, what an impact that it can have. So I'm trying to figure out ways to gather more steam along with the Kiss the Ground. Scott.
Sharon, you put in the chat the URL to go to the map of where these farmers are. And I hit it just because I wanted to see while we were watching the movie. And it brings up a whole nother movie. So I had to shut it off because I was watching 2 movies at once. But does anyone, my first question is, do we have local farmers or ranchers that are using this technique? And can we start making it sort of public that we're willing to pay more to buy from them? Yeah. Number 2, I kind of wonder, somebody who's big in the business like John O'Connor, what has he seen this? What does he think of it? Does he know about the network of people that are doing this or not doing it, and why?
Yeah.
One of the feelings I had in the movie was it sounded a little too good to be true. It's like it's the solution to everything. And I don't know, that undermines a little bit of how much of this to adopt and push for me until I like go to somebody like John O'Connor and say, what do you think of this? And if he says, oh yeah, I just wish I could get everybody to do it, then fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. I mean, a good comment, because the collected group here are not farmers currently, if you ever were. But one of the things that we could do is ask John if he'd come back for a conversation. Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I just watched the other day the Boise River Environmental Network or something like that. It's a nonprofit that kind of takes care of the Boise River, and they had a program with several farmers talking about doing that no-till and putting in drip systems in their fields and getting way more yields and less runoff and less silt in the river. And so there's several farmers that are taking it on, and they got some pretty big operations going. So it's happening at some level for sure.
Yeah, Tom, thank you. They showed a map, if you recall, in the movie, I think about the number of farms or et cetera that were actually going to regenerative farming. And then they showed, that was at the beginning, you know, like 10, 15 years ago. And then they showed now and currently there's a lot more on that map. And I think, Tom, you bring up a really good point, because my first thing was, well, who's doing it in Boise? Which Scott's sort of asking to as well. And so I would like to find out about that. And I think that's something we might want to do for sure.
Because if we had some information about that, then we could take turns just going to either the local grocery store or Albertson's headquarters or whatever and say, what are you doing about buying only from regenerative farmers?
Perfect.
You know, but we sort of need to know the background and the answer first. We can't sort of hold them to that if there isn't any available.
Yeah, let's get some leverage.
Well, and I'm just going to say, I'm sorry about that link. I was looking when they said something about finding local regenerative. I looked on their website and there was a farm map, but apparently I picked up the wrong URL. I apologize. But if you go to kisstheground.com, I believe it is the link. There's a variety of things on their menu. And I think that map business is there. So we didn't research that before the film or before this video. Yeah, go ahead, Eileen.
Thanks. 2 comments, and they're related. They're not direct. One is some of what we might do. Well, I think it's important to work fast. Tom and a very small group, a team of 4 of us, do a raptor survey out between Gooding and Shoshone every year. We've only been doing it 3 or 4 years. And this year, what was rather shocking were the number of feedlots that had gone in there. There were already huge feedlots. While we were doing the raptor survey this year, a whole new feedlot went in. So not only are we not, we're replicating the best. So finding a way to interrupt that would be really interesting. The other thing that I just want us to hold cognizance of, it's really important for our farmers to make money, regardless of their size. The small farmers at the market, people like Gabe Brown, who are doing really commercial farming. And it's also important for people to be able to afford food. So when he was showing the very impressive little egg experiment, the difference in cost, and keep in mind that other egg was a free range egg. It was not just the most commercial egg. The difference in cost between those two eggs is probably a factor of 50% to 100%. I would bet you that the free range costs $2.50. I bet you Gabe's cost $4 to $5 a dozen. And people who have to shop at Walmart are paying 99 cents a dozen. And they're shopping at Walmart because that's what they can afford. So it is a really complicated economic web. When you start pulling on it, it affects a lot of people. I would be all in favor of reducing subsidies for farmers, but I don't think we're going to save money, at least in the short run, because I think we'll have to give food subsidies to people to buy food. So it's it's a big question or a big conundrum in terms of this.
I'm just going to point to a comment that Claudia had in the chat, and she was saying, I think that was right after I mentioned what can we do. Claudia said, plant fruit trees at BUUF for a food forest. Well, that sounds like a cool idea. Any thoughts on that particular concept?
I want those guava trees out there.
Yeah, well, you know, it is a matter of who's going to take care of it, and what's been planted. You know, talk about a little catches of 22s. Is that somebody planted those plants and they're attached to them. They donated them. Somebody planted them, and they know what they are. And so, you know, we've got a lot of plants that are ornamental, or these grasses, which they might be pretty, but you know, we could have blueberry bushes, we could have raspberry bushes and blackberry bushes, we could have dwarf fruit trees easily, even some bigger fruit trees. But you know, it's not what they're thinking. So, yeah, right. It is. It's the last generation in a lot of ways, and so being able to you know, redirect some of that, and you know, at least get some pollinator gardens going. At least, you know, if we can't provide food, we need to take care of the bees and make sure they got the right plants and all the pollen they need to keep doing what they do. So there's things we can do for sure. And by the way, it's a nice time to go out and visit. I was there today, and so many things are blooming, and some of them are invasive species. But other than that, you know, all the crab trees are great, and crab apple trees are great, and so many poppies. And Carol, the irises are growing, they're blooming already. So anyway, take a trip out and look. It's beautiful.
Bob, did I see your hand up there for a minute?
Yeah, we've lived in two different houses, and at one, I had 7 fruit trees in the backyard, and we moved out of that house. And I found over the years that we rented it, the renters didn't seem to want to pick the fruit and enjoy the fruit, so I cut those all down. And then I lived in another house, and I had, I think, 4 fruit trees and blackberries. And we moved out of that house. When you rent, it just becomes a problem. I don't want all the fruit, and I managed it, I trimmed it, I sprayed it, I did everything, and the renters never wanted to bother with it. So, fruit trees are fine, but they are a lot of work. They are a lot of work, and we've lived in Ontario for 40 years, and I don't think any of these farmers out here are into regenerative farming, because every year, it's the same crops. It's either onions or it's sugar beets. And every spring, onions don't have a lot of cover. And every year we get a vast amount of topsoil blowing by our house. So, I can understand that we've lost, so much topsoil, because we've seen it for 40 years here. Every year it's just like a giant tornado, but it's dirt. So
Yeah, but they should have cover crops.
yeah, you got to have cover crops.
They
Yeah,
got to hold it
and
down.
onions are not a cover crop. So.
Yeah, no.
Wanda, are you holding your hand up to say something?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
I grew up on a farm in West Texas, and my brother now has that farm, and he turned it organic. And he said to his friends all around him, come on, let's do organic farming. I'll make 3 times as much money. 3 times as much money. None of them would do it. No.
Those
So
are
he's
tax
doing
things for you.
getting rich, but it costs 3 times as much money for you to go to the store and buy that organic, because you're paying him 3 times as much. So I don't know.
Wanda owns part of the farm.
I do.
She brought us all up.
And Bob, if you think you've seen sand in the air, dirt in the air, ask Wanda and Brian what panhandle dirt in the air looks like.
Yeah.
Well, I was impressed in the film, I think it was in this film, that I think Woody mentioned that we had about 60 years to take care of this. And I think the scene was we were looking at a depleted soil farm. And then he makes a comment, that means we have 60 harvests left.
Yep.
And I think
That's different, isn't it?
and it's
Mhm.
it doesn't take that long to do regenerative farming. You can convert it fairly quickly, but I think Scott hit it on the head too. And he talks about, having the ideas is great, and it looks good, and maybe have 1 or 2 outliers that I could do this. But, some of those shots of the farmers standing there with their hands up, like this, those are tough folks to convince to change, where they don't want to be on welfare, but they probably don't refuse the checks they get.
So, and the other thing is private agriculture is a pretty small percentage of agriculture now.
Yeah.
It's corporate agriculture, and kind of to Claudia's experience in Central America. Was in Ecuador, and we were looking at a project, a heifer project, and it was a farmer who had very small plot of land. I'm thinking maybe a couple, 3 acres, I don't know. That was absolutely like the Garden of Eden. I don't think there were 2 of any plants on there. You could walk from one end to the other and feed his family picking from the trees. immediately next to it, just like the photo that Gabe Brown showed, his property in one was Dole Plantation pineapple. There was not, it was between plantings. It looked exactly like the farm next to Gabe's. It was dead dirt. It was as far as you could see in any direction. And they spray everything there is to spray on this small farmer. You know, the wind carries it to his organic farm. And those are American corporations down there in Central and South America, replicating what we are doing here. So the corporate factor is huge, not only in the US, but around the world. That said, when private farmers, people like Gabe and these young farmers are standing up to it, you know, I wholeheartedly agree. We who can afford to need to support that in every way we can. And I think that's a big step of action. That's a big action step to go to the markets and support those farmers.
Thank you. I'm just going to read out of the chat another comment that Claudia made is Boise is ahead of things with the green bins and making compost for all contributors. So I agree with that. Nona is mentioning that this is very timely for Boise because they just had a news story about our landfill filling up much faster than they had expected. Now, landfills filling up is a pretty ugly thought, isn't it? I'm personally going to, I don't know, can't send it to China anymore, but then Claudia's comment is Walmart is not always the cheapest, really, and then suggests that planting native plants to really support the local environment. I know that there's some really important nurseries that have native plants in them and can give you advice. And the CAT team, those of you who were at the last CAT meeting, we'll be done with Earth Month, but we're not done with the climate change and the climate crisis. So there's going to be a topic coming up in the next couple of months. It'll be pollinator gardens, native plant species, and how you can transition your own lawn or yard or whatever to being more friendly to pollinator plants and things like that. And then Nona mentions also that we could subsidize the farmers for a number of years while they make their change to better ways. Yeah, it sounds like the subsidies and the economic incentives to keep going, keep on doing it the way you're doing it is sort of a important thing. And one of the quotes I wrote down from the film last night was when they were interviewing Gavin Newsom, who's the governor of California. Yeah. And one of the things that apparently they're doing something like that. I won't pretend to remember all the details, but his quote was, "Move the mouse. You want to move the mouse? Well, move the cheese."
Yeah.
So that would be the subsidies. That would be the incentives to keep the status quo. And so you subsidize, as Nona says, or somehow incentivize the change. And the change would mean maybe more than 60 harvests left in our topsoils. Maybe it would mean the nutrients that we all need to survive will return to the foods we're eating. Any last thoughts? We've gotten quite a long time of this discussion. Any last thoughts or you want to share with the group?
I want to ask Eileen, she maybe would know, how do we move the cheese for corporations, these agri-corporations? I know public opinion definitely helps, but it seems like it'd be anyway, I asked that question. Do you have any suggestions or anybody?
No, but that would, I don't, and other folks may. It's, they've got a lot of money behind themselves, just the messaging in the marketing, that GMOs are to secure the food supply for the future. And of course, at the same time, they are, what's the word, not copywriting, but securing the what?
Patenting.
Patenting. Thanks.
Yes, the seeds, right?
Yeah, and to their credit, it is really indigenous farmers, particularly in Central and South America, who are fighting that with their seed banks.
That's what we
And
do.
yeah, so Carol, I think part of it is never failing to answer the message or the marketing, that if they put that out, that the community that is behind sustainability has got to answer that with the greater truth that's behind it.
Yeah.
I think the market,
Public education seems like would be a really critical piece here.
and I think the market, they do listen to the market and what people are buying. There's a lot more organic produce available in the store, and the prices come down, and they are seeing that people would rather buy that. And so they're trying to, we got to be careful because they'll try and change the rules so they can make it easier to be organic. But, if you can keep them to the true code, and people will support that. So I think it could happen if we just let our desires be known.
Yeah.
Does anybody know how much of the farm subsidy is going to big agribusiness through whatever means?
Well, I was
Good question.
listening to Democracy Now! Today, and they were talking about that. The COVID, the big package for the pandemic, one figure that was thrown out was $15 million, dollars went to farmers and these big corporate farms, I'm sure, got that money. And they were supposed to keep their workers on and all that. Instead, they put, I think, 11 million, it was said, into political donations and lobbying. So, yeah, and so, the powers that be are telling us that the solution to climate change is capitalism, and the market are the best solutions. Bill Gates, Bloomberg, they were at this summit.
Right.
Bush was just in on, the climate summit virtual. They did a virtual one. And I think they're on the wrong track. The powers that be are on the wrong track. And it would take grassroots, a lot of people working hard to buck that.
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Simplot is a big contributor to this, because where we live in Wyoming, outside of Afton, they mine phosphate. And so they sluice that phosphate 86 miles underground to Chubbuck, Idaho, which is basically Pocatello. And every year when we go to Wyoming, the mountain of sludge is a little higher. So they're taking it from one part of Idaho or Wyoming, I'm not sure which side the border it's on, and they're transforming it. So, it's phosphate, and farmers need phosphate, or so they say. So it's, I don't know, it's a never ending problem. I don't think we'll solve it in our lifetimes.
Yeah. Well, the climate crisis itself is huge. And
Yes.
I went into this film thinking that there was only one real solution, but I think there are many. And you're right. Everybody's right. When you start to gain some leverage, those folks that have the most to lose, the corporations, will up the ante, and that's just
Yep.
that's just the nature of the business. In regards to capitalism, I think in some respects that's probably not a bad answer in terms of providing people the opportunity to become entrepreneurs, to buck that system, and to benefit from the rewards that that would come from that. But I just, you know, I would encourage you, House Bill 2307. That's on the that's the Innovation Act and Carbon Dividend. Right now, I would say that that's absolutely the best solution that we have to reducing carbon emissions. Kiss the Ground, I think, is wonderful, and I would hope that we all just spread the word on this, have as many people see this, because I think a few of you have mentioned that, you know, these kind of quote revolutions start with just a very few people, and it sounds like it's already started. And so it would be my hope that we could just continue to raise our voice and shout a little louder. But we'll get the fact, we'll get some more proof, more people on board, and just continue to spread the word, because I like that one statement they made: the quality, our quality of our food is dependent on the quality of the soil. And so if we're happy with what we're eating, if we're willing to ingest the pesticides and with the depleted soil, and if we're willing to absolutely turn our entire planet into a desert, then we'll just continue the way we are. I'm not satisfied with that.
I'm going to just comment that, or make a note that Claudia's holding up the book. She mentioned in the chat, there's a locally produced book, 100 pollinator plants for the Treasure Valley. Native plants are noted as what pollinators visit them, and it's available at local nurseries. And and Tom said, you are what you eat. And I've got a couple of closing bits of information that I want to share with you. So first of all, as the film and everybody have mentioned, the Kiss the Ground movie is available for streaming on Netflix. If you want to spread the word, have other people, folks in your family that you know, or neighborhood or whatever, it's on Netflix. We bought the DVD, so we have a DVD that we could lend to you if you would like to, and after a few weeks we'll put it in the BUUF library so that you can check it out. Tom Steppich and I think Linda Barlow are the librarians, and it's a little convoluted now because of the worldwide pandemic, but under other times it's pretty easy to get things out of the library, so it'll be there. Tonight and last night, the Kiss the Ground presentations are part of the Climate Action Team's Earth Month. Started on April 18th, and we'll go in second week of May. Sorry, got my months mixed. So the next things that are up, next activities and presentations that are coming up, we'll have the Meatless Monday coming up on Monday the 26th. That's Chef Michael Alvarado and his able assistant, Reverend Sarah, preparing Pasoli Roja. If you'll go to the website there on the BUUF website and go to the CAT webpage, I put the link in at the beginning. I'll put it in again here at the end. You can see the menu and the shopping list and cook right along with them. So that's Meatless Monday on the 26th. On May 2nd, Ty Benoit, who is a trainer for the Climate Reality Project, is going to be speaking about equitable climate action having to do with racial justice and climate justice, which go hand in hand around the world. She'll talk about that. She's a former member of BUUF and is now living in Northern California. Yeah, so you keep, so and also we had Where's the Beef, a plant-based diet presentation on, what day was that? That was the 20th. And so we got some really good information from Paula and John Warren. And they're going to come back for kind of a follow-up on May the 4th with further information about plant-based diet and resources and so forth.
And you do not have to have been to their first presentation.
Right. And then on May 6th, that's Thursday, May 6th, members of the Citizens Climate Lobby in Boise are going to talk to us. That's Nancy Basinger and Linda Ritterauger. They're going to talk about the Citizens Climate Lobby solution, which is putting a price on carbon and information about that. We've focused on what people can do, and policy change is very important. And we can lobby our representatives and government officials to let them know what we think about farming practices and subsidies. So that will also is augmented by all of the activities that are listed on the Interactive Earth Month calendar. Lots of different things Scott and Kathy put together this really interesting and colorful and awesome thing. And Tom, well, look at you. So Tom is holding up parts of the Earth Kit that are located in the goodie bag that you can pick up, I think, today or tomorrow in preparation for Sunday's worship service. So
good job putting this together. This is fun, and you guys are awesome to be able to pull this off. Way to go. Good move. A lot of good stuff in here.
Well, I think Cornelia had a little bit to do with that. So
it's not called climate action team for nothing. It's a team effort.
right.
Man, there was everybody doing everything.
that's right. That's right.
Did you say Claudia was the one behind this?
Cornelia. Well, and maybe Claudia
And
too.
Claudia may have been part of that too.
Yeah, several people really, did all the little pieces to that. So we really appreciate that. At any rate, no, he wasn't Claudia. She's shaking her head. All right. Anyway, any last questions? It looks like a couple things in there. You are what you eat. Also, kudos to the filmmakers for reaching out to a woman of color who's leading in her field. It's great to host.
Host her here. It'd be great to host her.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're talking about the Detroit dirt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be something? Composting is on my to-do list. Anyway, folks, thank you so much for attending tonight. And if you've attended other presentations this last week, thank you for your interest and your participation. And stay tuned for Pasole Roja, whatever it is, Rojo. I'm not sure. What are you making on Monday? I don't know what it is. Anyway, Sole.
Yeah. You keep doing some research out there.
What is that?
There's no.
It's really good.
It's good.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
Excellent. All right, everybody. Thanks so much.
Okay.
All
Thank you very
right,
much.
let's kiss the ground next
Yeah.
time you get a chance.
Have a good weekend.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.
That was great.
I can't get it to go away. There it went.
There you go.
There you go.
Okay, end recording.